No.
And, welcome to my TED Talk. It's gonna be about why I should have a car. Okay. Here you can see at the bottom, you have my phone number, my email, my contact information if you need to get to me for any other purposes. Some photos of me, headshots, taken by myself. Alright, so why I should have a car. Let's start with the why. I feel like that's the most important part when it comes to trying to get a car or trying to get anything. I feel like your reason is pretty important. My reason is pretty simple. I need a car and I want a car.
You do got a point there.
There's no explanation for the want. I feel like everyone knows why someone wants a car. You want to be able to drive. You want that extra bit of freedom. You want to be able to do whatever you have to do without spending someone else's gas money, without having to ask your parents, can I go there? Can I go this? Now, the need is much more important. Me, I have to travel between 2 different schools 3 times a week, and sometimes additionally on the weekend, depending on the occasion that I'm doing for ROTC. Like I said, it's not for fun. I literally have to travel between these 2 different schools, or else it's going to be a whole lot more complicated. So let's go ahead and dive a bit deeper into why I have to travel between these 2 different schools. So last year alone, I traveled between Howard and George Washington University about 180 times. 30 weeks in a school year, 3 times per week, for classes, both there and back, labs on Fridays, of course. And this only represents the times I went for classes and the times I went for labs. It doesn't explain all the extra times I had to go to supply to go change out a uniform item, all the times I had to go on weekends for color guard events. It doesn't explain all those extra things. This is only the times I had to go for sure. Alright, so a more accurate estimation in my mind would be like 200 plus. There's no way for me to accurately write down the number because I wasn't counting every single time I went between the 2 different schools. And then additionally, it's only logical that if as a freshman I went 200 plus times, me as a sophomore, me as a junior, me as a senior will have to go even more times because I'll have more jobs in the unit. Now let's look at the cost and methods of these travels. So as you know, since I don't have a car, I have 4 methods in DC. Public transportation, carpooling, a bike, and Uber/Lyft. Now let's really think, are they reliable? Aiden, out of these 4, which one do you think is the most reliable?
Probably a bike.
Which one do you think is most reliable?
Uber and Lyft.
Uber and Lyft. Dad, which one do you think is most reliable?
Public transportation.
Public transportation. Grandma?
Obviously public.
Public transportation.
Same.
Public transportation.
I'll change my answer.
Wrong! It's Uber and Lyft.
I knew it!
Public transportation is not always available when I have to do stuff for ROTC. ROTC is extremely early in the morning. Sometimes we're looking at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Insane times. Public transportation is not always available, and even if it is available, you have to account for that extra hour that it takes for public transportation. So if I have to be somewhere at 4 in the morning for ROTC, I need to be leaving at 3 in the morning from Howard University to make sure I can get there at time, which means I probably need to wake up at 2:30 in the morning, which is insane for a college student. Bike got stolen. First day I took it out. DC is treacherous. We know this. In addition to that, it requires a lot of work to go 3 miles in DC, up and down hills. Let's say I'm wearing my summer whites. I'm not exactly going to be taking a bike across town. It's going to get my uniform all messed up. And as you know, for RTC, I have to wear uniforms all the time. Carpooling relies too much on extra midshipmen. Mom, as you know, I had to ask you a lot of time for Uber money because other midshipmen weren't available to come get us. Or they would say they would come get us, and then they wouldn't. It's just a lot of hassling when you have to rely on other people's vehicles. And then for Uber and Lyft, the only reason why it's always available is because there's always an Uber or Lyft driver. If you go on that app, there will always be someone, and I can confirm that because when we got back from New Orleans, I think it was like 1 in the morning, and there was still an Uber driver to take me from GW back to Howard. But with Uber, it costs the amount of traffic, depending on a lot of different things. So let's look a bit more at this breakdown. I went through my Uber app, and I collected all the data from every single time I had to Uber from either Howard to George Washington, Howard to Catholic, Howard to Georgetown University. Keep in mind, this is only the times I Ubered through my phone. This doesn't count all the times that I might have sent someone else money for them to Uber us together. This doesn't count all those other times. So just with my data, the total was almost $600 on Uber in 1 year.
35 trips.
Keep in mind, that was only 35 trips out of the 200 plus. So sure, it's not a huge percentage, but like we said, it is the most reliable. And me going into my sophomore, senior year, when I'm gonna have more billets, meaning I'm gonna have to travel more on my own, that price is only gonna go up more. Yeah. And here's a chart. As we can see, once again, explaining why that carpooling is not reliable. Here, earlier in the school year, we can see it wasn't as bad, but then it just spikes randomly, depending on those other people. Later, towards the end of spring semester, it got really bad because people just didn't want to go anymore, and I had to rely on Uber a lot. Next, let's talk about the car. Because obviously, if I want a car, it's important to know which kind of car I want. And here's where I'd like to point out that it could be this car, it could be that car, it could be this car, it could be that car, this one, that 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 one. I don't care. I do not care about the car. As long as it can fit in most DC parking garages, because that's where I'm probably going to have to park a lot of the times, and can travel from Howard University to George Washington University, I do not care, as long as it can drive. So literally, this means any type of vehicle that's not a bus, a tank, just anything that can drive regularly and fit in parking garages.
That was funny.
Now let's talk about the problems, because of course buying a car comes with its own problems. And in my mind, the only two problems that I saw that seriously affected me was one, it's DC, aka the dangerous city. It's not the District of Columbia, it's the dangerous city. And then it's costly. We know this. And then two, DC being dangerous, I say, the only reason those people who got their cars broken into did get their cars broken into is because they were parking out in the street. Towers has its own personal parking garage that you have to pay for, of course, yes. But it's cheaper than that $600 Uber price, that's for sure. And it's costly. Car's gonna be costly regardless. College is gonna be costly regardless. You can't really mitigate that. And then lastly, I just like to look at some exhibits of why I think I deserve a car. So exhibit A, we have on May 25th, 2019, Nathan gets his permit, and then on August 12th of 2020, Nathan gets his driver's license. Both passed, first try, didn't have to do any extra retakes, didn't have to go to the DMV more than once, and both gotten as soon as I could. I mean, the date was, you had to be 15 and 10 months and 2 days, and I was taking that test when I was 15-year-old, 10 months and 2 days in, immediately. Passed both tries. And Mom, as I remember, pointed out that I was the youngest person in our family to do that ever. Exhibit B, on March 18th of 2022, Nathan gets a full ride scholarship to Virginia State University, and on April 23rd of 2022, Nathan gets an NRTC scholarship and a capstone scholarship to Howard University. Additionally, I don't know if Mom remembers this, but I'd like to point out a promise that she made to me. She said, and I quote, "If you get a scholarship, you will get a car." So I said, bet, not one, not two, but 3 scholarships. No car. And then lastly, exhibit 3. On April 28th of 2023, Nathan obtains 3 billets in his ROTC unit, despite the struggles and the handicaps of being a crosstowner, which already comes with a lot of issues. And then lastly, the elephant in the room, right? When it comes to me and cars, there's 2 big things that one can point out. I've crashed a car, and that I might have lost my capstone scholarship depending on what Howard says in these next few days. Now, while it is true that I crashed the car, I believe that it was not my fault because I was merging on that highway and that truck driver rear-ended me when I was already on the highway. And then when it comes to capstone scholarship, that's still up in the air, and we don't know what's going to happen with that. Those are the only 2 things that I really see when it comes to like the elephant in the room in cars. And then that is the end.